Members of Synod, let me just take you through a few things. I beg your pardon. Members of Synod, take a minute to kind of shake your arms out or something. Oh, they're ready to go. Okay, that's fine. You can stop. AV things, you know. So, first of all, I would like to let you know, you might have noticed that we have Sharon Hollis sitting up on the end of the front table here, possibly slightly just out of sight, but next to our Associate General Secretary. As you I trust, already aware, Sharon in due course is going to become our next Associate General Secretary, so for which we're very grateful. And so it seemed like a good idea for her to learn some of the ropes, so she's going to sit there for today. The next thing I want to say is that ballot 4, the results of ballot 4 were that all nominees received well over the required 50% of support. Now, let me explain a little bit about the ballots. So, when we elect people to positions of leadership in the Synod, we want to make sure that they have the support of at least half of the Synod to take on those roles. And they need to know that they've got the support of at least half of the Synod. In some cases, we actually set the bar even higher, such as for the moderator. So what we've done so far is we've declared that everyone who has said that they are willing to be nominated for the Standing Committee would have the support of the Synod. So we've established that. So now we're going to do a preferential vote to work out, okay, out of those people who will serve in this manner. So unlike Parliament, where you can get in if you have 0.6% of the vote, here we make sure that everyone's got at least 50% of the vote to start with. So that's the explanation. And with that, can I hand over to Rod Mummery to introduce the preferential ballot.
Moderator Rod Mummery, Returning Officer. Thank you, Moderator, for that explanation. The ballot is the preferential ballot. I don't have a slide because you're familiar with that now from yesterday with the drop-down. There will be 7 names to be ranked. The ballot is about to open and will close after morning tea. Now, some people have had problems with their devices actually finding the button at the bottom of the screen. Usually it's because for some reason you need to actually completely close the app, flick it off the top of your screen on a phone or a tablet and open it again. If you're on the computer, probably refreshing the browser will force it to update and find the button for the voting. I'd just like to mention in the profiles, which have been there for a little while, there is an explanation on the very last page of what the 3, 2, 1s mean in the skills matrix. There's quite a detail there, so that's on the very last page because I understand on some devices the links in the PDF, which are supposed to work and do work on a computer, don't work on some tablets, so you can just scroll down to the very end. I think that's all I need to say, Moderator.
Thank you, Rod. We move to some reports, some follow-up reporting. We have a question and answer session. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon? Business Manager.
Sorry, Moderator. I might just reinforce, because we've had so many ballots, the timing of this one is a little bit unusual. So that will be available for you very soon and we'll need to close by the end of morning tea. We wouldn't normally open a ballot mid-session, but because we need the results of that in order to commission people at the closing service this afternoon, we need you to have a look at that during this session and through morning tea. So it will close at 11:30.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to hear first of all from Synod Ministry and Operations, Ministry and Mission Committee and Property and Operations Committees. So Isabel Thomas-Dobson is going to take the General Secretary's chair. I'll invite those appropriate people to come onto the stage, and then we are going to hear a 2-minute presentation from each. First of all, I trust that a number of you with particular interests will have engaged through the Choose Your Own Report process earlier. So with all of these Q&As, there has already been some opportunity to interrogate the reports, which I trust you've taken advantage of, but we can do so a little more in plenary here. So we will go through the, in order of, first of all, SMO, Synod Ministry and Operations, then M&M and P&O, and we'll allow a bit of table group time after each has given their introduction, just so that you can talk about what you've heard and what you might want to discuss further. So we begin with Synod Ministry and Operations, the General Secretary.
Thank you, Moderator. Mark Lawrence, General Secretary. I live on land of the Bunurong people. Could I have the slide up, please? So, the earlier slide than that. Yes, thanks. So, what is Synod Ministries and Operations, sometimes known as SMO, S-M-O? So, Synod Ministries and Operations on this diagram is everything in the rectangles, the green rectangles, and the dot lists under there. The units are the rectangles, equipping Leadership for Mission, headed up by Duncan, the Secretariat, headed up by Isabel and myself, and the Mission Resourcing Unit, headed up by Sam. Each of these units serve the church to help the whole church undertake its worship, witness and service responsibilities. Within each unit, there are a number of teams. Sometimes there's a team of one, but there are a number of teams, and they're listed underneath each of the units. There are arrows in the long green rectangle where it says Synod Ministries and Operations. There are arrows, and that indicates that we seek to work across units and across teams as much as possible to help resource the whole church and to help us understand our roles with each other as well. Each of these units and the teams within them resources and engages with the circles, those circles at the top of the diagram. They're a range of governance committees, institutions of the church, the property trust, the congresses, other associated groups in the life of the church that we are engaged with on a day-by-day basis. What's not in this diagram are the presbyteries, the congregation, the assembly, and various parts of civil society that we engage with. When we start adding those parts, the diagram gets even more complicated. Synod Ministries and Operations supports those committees and other parts of the church in undertaking their responsibilities to address issues across the life of the church in Synod, in Victoria and Tasmania. The papers for Synod Ministries and Operations are in section E, and hopefully you've all read them and have engaged with various staff members and so forth over these days. Synod Ministries and Operations are guided by values and characteristics. They emerge from the Synod's vision and mission principles, and we seek to work together with values of trust, collaboration, sustainability and growth. And these aims, these values and characteristics are there to help us make sure that we have these distinguishing features in our work across the teams and the units, and also for our engagement with the wider church, the committees, the councils of the church, and the institutions of the church. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. For the M&M Ministry and Mission Committee, Paul Chandler is going to speak. Thank you.
Moderator, Paul Chandler, Ministry and Mission, Wurundjeri country. It's a surprise to be here, really. When I accepted the invitation to step into being a member of M&M in 2021, I didn't really expect to be chairing the committee in 2023. And I'm very conscious that having accepted that invitation, I'm yet another middle-aged white guy, and that does bring with it some challenges about the direction of the church, but it's one that I wear honestly and openly, and accept also that I have the privilege of being a layperson in that role. So I have a full-time day job, and M&M is one of the ways in which I serve the church. As we meet on a monthly basis, and I would pay my deep gratitude to the members of the committee, most of whom are actually here this synod, except for Alex Sangster. We hear a number of obviously challenges, but also opportunities and delights where the flame of the mission and ministry of the committee burns bright. And we hear that and we rejoice with the excellent work of Elm units and the streams there, the continuing work of Pilgrim and how they continue to be a deep resource and gift to the Synod and all its congregations and members. The work of ecumenical engagement, which has been reignited more particularly in recent times. The work of the Mission Grants Executive and its catalyst projects. And in particular, I think I would name the close collaboration that the committee has had with Property and Operations and the Synod Standing Committee. There is a genuine sense of strong purpose and friendship and collaboration amongst the three committees. My job would only really be possible given that I'm a busy congregational person as well, if it were not for somebody being prepared to step up as Deputy Chair, and I'm delighted that Belinda Clear has accepted that responsibility going forward. That means that the committee will be able to start reshaping exactly what it does over the next period of time. We've spent a good deal of time in discernment around camping, around ecumenical engagement, around pathways to ministry. How they take shape and how they direct the course of this governance committee over the next period of time will be important, and we've now hit a unique opportunity to regather, regroup and point our way forward, and hopefully to find some ways that we can talk to the Synod about how the flame of the Synod and its mission burns bright more frequently than simply once every Synod. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And Stan will speak regarding Property and Operations Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Moderator. Stan Clark, Chair of the Property and Operations Committee, and I live on the land of the Djau Djau Wurrung people. Members of Synod, unlike my esteemed colleagues in SMO, who are employed by the Church, members of P&O are like you. We are members of congregations, members of presbytery, involved in those struggles in congregational land to maintain our properties and sustain the viability of our congregations. So we are acutely aware of the impacts of the increasing number and complexity of measures that the state requires of us to maintain properties in the public space. Things like DSM measures, things like adequate insurance, etc. Measures that are necessary to protect congregations and members. So you can be assured that we are absolutely committed to finding the most cost-efficient way to maintain a credible presence in the public space. Sadly, I feel I need to disavow a misconception that I seem to regularly come across throughout our church, that the Synod is flush with funds. Wherever we've got a problem or we come up with a good idea, Synod will pluck something off the magic money tree that we haven't yet found and be able to solve those issues and fund it for us. We keep looking for that tree, but we haven't found it yet. The real wealth of the church is in congregations, in the property that we own, not in the Synod's bank accounts. Yes, there's money in the Synod bank accounts, but most of it's in special trusts and in special purpose funds that all have very specific usage that can be applied to, that the Synod doesn't have discretion over how it's used. Natalie Brown and the team from the grants team do a magnificent job in dissecting all those special trusts and so on to get as much money as we can directed into the grants applications that come through. But there's no fat left in the Synod's budget. The property wealth of the church, meanwhile, lies under the responsible body status of congregations, who are blessed with significant financial resources, some of them as well. There is a significant inequity in the wealth distribution across congregations. And perhaps those blessed with greater resources could choose to contribute to the commonwealth of our church by funding initiatives like the zero emissions initiatives that we're talking around yesterday, in a way that the Synod is not able to do. What P&O do is explore every opportunity to maximise Synod revenues and to minimise the cost to enable as much ministry and mission support that we can possibly provide out into the life of the church.
Stan, you'll need to wrap it up,
Yep.
please.
And so that is often a very complex and challenging work, and sometimes requires very professional expertise, hence SMO. But we're privileged to do this work on your behalf because we are your servants. We are you.
Thank you, Stan. Take 5 minutes in table groups to talk about what you've seen across all of the reporting that you've had from SMO, P&O and M&M, and perhaps conversations that you've had if you were part of going to some of those choose your own report sessions. 5 minutes in table groups, and then we'll have some questions.
Sitting here with all my friends.
I'm glad that you covered us.
It's very hard to talk about smoke in 2 minutes.
Today's camping workshop as well.
As in prospective stuff.
Yeah, no, there's a little bit of bloodletting one or two from Western Victoria, but about 25.
Members of Synod, I suggest you make your final comments. Thank you, members of Synod. Can I just let you know, in case you were thinking, oh, I'll use this moment to vote, please actually don't. The voting system has been working very well for us so far, but it's actually, we're having trouble getting it loaded for this morning. So don't all log on and try to vote yet. We'll let you know. Okay. There's an opportunity for some questions or comments to SMO, M&M or P&O, so yes, come to the front. We're not going to be reopening discussion about the climate change proposal yet. We will come to that, but yes, thank you from the microphone to the east.
Moderator, Andrea Mays of from Wurundjeri Country, Port Phillip East Presbytery, she, her. I have a question related to the 2022 annual financial statements. I reference these, the annual financial report. I reference this report because we were not given the current budget for the Synod in our papers. The report seems to indicate that the reason there was a deficit of $6 million for the year was because of the decrease of value in our investments. I expect that you do not expect this to continue, that there will also be years when our investments break even or even make a profit. Overall, the Synod expenses of $43 million were less than the income of $56 million. My question is, can you tell me that despite having an income of $56 million, spending less than we receive, and owning $388 million in assets, that the Synod can't find $100,000 a year, the equivalent of one full-time ministry placement, to put towards the declared Synod priority of demonstrating justice for all creation by reducing our emissions?
The questions regarding the budget we can take at this time. So can we have a response about that, please? Thank you, General Secretary.
Thank you, Moderator. That's a big question. with a lot of parts. The important thing to remind the Synod about is that this Synod meeting is that the overwhelming amount of resources that the Synod receives are used within congregations and presbyteries through the work of Synod staff, people in Elm, people in MRU, and people in the Secretariat helping to resource the church to do its ministry and mission. It doesn't all stay in Wesley Place and the CTM. It comes into there and it is used for those areas. Also, the Synod budget includes resourcing presbyteries, resourcing the Assembly, making our contribution to resource the Assembly, and resourcing ecumenical and interfaith partners. Again, it doesn't all stay in Wesley Place and the CTM. It is used for the wider church. It's called the Synod budget, but we should call it the budget, a key budget for the uniting church across Victoria and Tasmania, and helping and contributing to the Assembly as well. So that's the kind of mindset that I hope that the Synod will have as we think about the resources that we have in the life of the church and the way that they are used. When the picture is painted in the way that it was, you could say that $100,000 could be easy to find. The reality is the Synod processes over the last 5 or 6 years have trimmed Synod staff significantly to the bare bones, and I could point to many people in this room who have come up to me over the years and said, we can't get responses because everybody's too busy. Everybody's too busy because we've cut things as much as they can be, and we've had to reduce some of our contributions to wider church as well. So, you might say, well, $100,000, what's the big deal? If in our current arrangements we reduce, we spend $100,000 further per year in the zero emissions question, that will mean either a further reduction in Synod staff, which means less service to congregations and presbyteries, or it will mean a reduction to the Assembly, or it will mean a reduction to our interfaith and ecumenical partners, or it will mean we will go into further deficit. And if we go into further deficit, that means we will use our reserves, and there'll be fewer reserves for our ongoing ministry and mission. This is a complex and a complicated space, and there are no easy ways forward. If it was easy, and if we could find a simple solution, we would have addressed it already. We continue, P&O particularly, but also supported by staff, continue to work on our revenue streams and building them up as much as possible, and our expenditure to be done in the most efficient ways possible. Please be assured, we are seeking to serve the church in the best way we possibly can across SMO and resourcing M&M and P&O and the Standing Committee to do that. And it's complex and it's challenging.
Thank you, Mark. Sam?
And Sam will add a technical...
and we're not going to continue into a discussion about this proposal. That will be for later. So sit down, please. Sam?
Sam Nicholas, Executive Officer, Mission Resourcing Union. I work on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. Just to clarify a couple of things, when we look at our annual accounts, and as I've presented at prior Synod meetings, when we look at our actual reserves in terms of our capital, it looks like a lot. There's $380 million, but 3/4 of that is trusts and bequests. So when you take that out of the equation, the actual leftover portion in terms of funding our day-to-day operations is quite small. And coupled with that is that when you look at the income and expense lines within the annual accounts, Synod Ministries and Operations, the true underlying financial position, once you take out all the income that's received from trusts and bequests, and non-operational activities, we run an annual deficit budget, as per stated in all the committee reports, and also as stated and recommended and approved by the Standing Committee in terms of its current financial operating loss and next year's financial operating loss. So I hope that clarifies in terms of making a distinction between what's in the annual accounts and what truly operates and controlled by Synod Ministry operations, and how we deploy our resources based on our income, and the things that we manage and administer which we can't deploy and control, which is dictated by certain requirements in terms of trust and bequests in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? In the east.
Moderator Avril Hannah-Jones, Yarra Yarra Presbytery. I'm so sorry to ask this question in plenary. I missed the Choose Your Own report yesterday. It's about Note 26, contingent liabilities, and talking about our work with the Assembly to provide a single response to the Commonwealth redress model. I noticed that under legal it said that legal was dealing with 24 claims of child sex abuse, but I couldn't find anywhere how much compensation we were providing to people who made those claims, or whether indeed we were taking them to court, which I hope we're not. So I was wondering if that information was somewhere in here.
Thank you for the question, General Secretary. And the next question will be the last one, and then we'll need to move on to the next section.
Thank you, Moderator. We can't give the specific amounts about how much people receive for redress because that's confidential to them. However, the average redress payment which is being made across the redress scheme is about $70,000. That's nationally. And all I can say is we're in keeping with those average payments. There's a scale through 4 tiers which is for redress payments, and those payments are determined by independent assessors based out of the Department of Social Security. It has nothing to do with the Synod. We are told the amount that we have to pay, and if a survivor indicates that they would like a direct personal response, we engage with those survivors through the cultural safety team to find the most appropriate response that will suit them. We, as a Synod, are not involved in any civil claims at the moment. There are some schools associated with the Uniting Church and institutions that are part of the Uniting Church that are involved in civil claims. The payments for civil claims are made by those institutions, so it's not appropriate for us to indicate those costs. We are not in formal court proceedings with any survivors currently.
Thank you. And from the
Moderator Craig Thompson, Yarra Yarra Presbytery, on the lands of the Wurundjeri. My question goes also to the financial statements. To begin with, it would be helpful probably for the Synod at some stage to have a slightly more plain English presentation of the accounts. I recognise the necessity of presenting them in the way that they are for those who can process them, but subtleties such as what funds, for example, are tagged and what are actually sort of funds the Synod has coming from other sources would be very helpful to clarify the way in which the money is being used. So also references to things like realised and unrealised gains and losses are very difficult to make sense of in terms of questions about whether we're running profits or losses and those sorts of things. It's been said a couple of times by both Mark and Sam that there is a real deficit in terms of we are spending more than we get. My question is, what is funding the deficit? So is it out of reserves, is it out of windfalls, such sources as that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
I'll let Sam give a technical response, and I might add something.
Thank you, Sam Nicholas.
Sam Nicholas, live on the land of the Wurundjeri people. So a couple of questions. Your first question was a recalibration or redesign of the annual accounts because they are in accordance with, obviously, accounting standards. But I point you all to the Synod website under resources. It's a little bit out of date. I had a look at it this morning because I thought this question might come up. Is that it breaks down the actual budget from a missional lens perspective as to where the income comes from and how it's deployed across the life of the church. And there's various pies, graph representation of how that looks. So I do point you to that. I think it's a couple of years old. I've asked my team this morning to actually update it based on the latest information, but in material form, you'll get an appreciation and an understanding of what that entails and what that looks like. And we're always open for you all to come and approach us at Synod office to unpack that and understand that, and even come into your spaces and have that conversation with you. As for your second question, where does the actual funding actually come from? We reference that as general reserves or undesignated funds, and that's how we fund our day-to-day operations, and they're quite distinct from specific purpose and designated funds. And they have, as pointed out in the Finance Committee, there's a graphical representation of what that looks like. And based on current trajectories, our funds last us, if we stay in our current shape and format in terms of financial position, to around about 2054.
Thank you. That brings to a conclusion this part of the report, so thank you to those on stage. Can we thank the people on stage and invite onto stage, and the General Secretary will resume the chair here. I'd like to invite onto the stage the representatives from U Ethical, Uniting Age Well and Uniting Vic Tas. So that's for U Ethical, Lindsay Mann and Matt Browning, the Chair and CEO respectively. For Uniting Age Well, Raylene Thompson and Andrew Kinnersley, likewise. And for Uniting Vic Tas, Jude Munro and Amy Pagdam is coming as the acting CEO for Uniting. So welcome to you all, and I'll invite you to speak for 2 minutes each in the order of U Ethical first, then Age Well, then Uniting. So thank you to Lindsay.
Lindsay Mann, I'm the chair of the board of U Ethical, and I live on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. I hope you've had the chance to read our report and see our video. I know that must have been very exciting. We got all of 6 people at our session yesterday, and one wandered in by accident, but they stayed. That was what was important, and I think we had a very useful time focusing mainly on the ethical investing activities rather than the balance sheet. Our financial surplus for the financial year, the last financial year just ended, it did exceed our budget, and we were able to make a contribution to Synod that was higher than budgeted and slightly higher than the previous year. So that was the good news. Unfortunately, the larger than expected surplus grew through lower expenses rather than actually growing our business and growing our revenue, which is what we're really all about. Our strategic focus still remains on growth from outside the Uniting Church. The only way we're going to be able to increase our contribution to Synod is to find more investors who want to put their money with us and not just rely upon the church funds that we look after. We remain focused on looking after our church clients and being a leader in ethical investing, and also creating a wonderful workplace for our employees. We continue to pursue the Uniting Church's values and resolutions through our investment portfolios. And that includes our active stewardship program, engaging with companies on important issues such as fossil fuel financing, modern slavery and Indigenous community rights. And that's just a few examples, it's not a complete list. Our pathway to growth has had its challenges in the past few years, but there are positive signs. And since our report to Synod was written, we've seen further evidence that we have something valuable to offer to the external marketplace. I'm going to have to read this because it just gets a little bit complicated. We received investment grade or better ratings from our independent global ratings house Morningstar for our Australian equities and enhanced income funds. I can see the red light. We received the Money Magazine Best of the Best 2024 award for the Best Australian ESG Shares Fund, second year in a row, and we were again named as Responsible Investment Leader by the Responsible Investment Association of Australia. The outlook is challenging, but we're going to do our best.
Thank you, Lindsay. And for Uniting Age Well, Raylene, thank you.
Thank you, Moderator. Biggest challenge will be 2 minutes, but I'll do my best. So Raylene Thompson, I'm the Chair of Uniting Age Well Board, and I live and work on Wurundjeri land. I don't want to go through all the detail that's in our reports. I hope that you've all read them and watched the video that's presented by our CEO, Andrew. And thank you to the people who came to the Choose Your Own Report sessions yesterday. We had more people than we expected, so we were very grateful to have that opportunity to have a more in-depth discussion. The couple of things I want to say to you today is thank you. Thank you for the privilege to be part of this organisation that is the Church at Work. I don't know if any of you have thought about it in this way, but I think about the fact that we touch many lives on behalf of all of you in an expression of the Church at Work. And if you add up our staff and our customers or clients, residents, however you want to describe people, that's at least 20,000 people. And if you add in all the people who care about those people, their families, their friends, other people who work with them, we're touching the lives of probably 100,000 people across Victoria and Tasmania on behalf of all of you as the Church. I think that's fabulous, and I want to really acknowledge that privilege that it is for all of us to do this work for you and on behalf of you. So it's an exciting time for Age Well. We've got capital works happening, we've got growth in our home care sector, we've got positive feedback on our service provision across all of our services, we've got devoted staff, we've got a fabulous CEO who I want to acknowledge and really call out his devotion over the last few years. The last few years have been terribly challenging for aged care. Challenging not just because of COVID, but because of the Royal Commission and the atmosphere that is in the community around aged care. But our challenge and our purpose is to be an absolute exemplar of what good aged care can be. And that's our purpose on behalf of the Church, to show that you can do it well, you can do it with respect and kindness, which are two of our core values, and you can grow and be successful. However, the challenges are there for us. We have run in deficit as well over the last couple of years. COVID has been extremely challenging, not just to keep people alive and well, but also to be financially viable. The whole sector is in trouble financially in the residential sector. Many of you may know that, but if you don't, it is extremely difficult to operate residential aged care under the current funding model. There are going to be changes. There's a task force looking at this, and that will present some opportunity, I think, for a new funding model, but it may very well be quite challenging for the community. We don't know what it's going to be.
You'll need to wrap it up, please, Raylene.
Pardon?
You'll need to wrap it up.
Oh, sorry, I was watching for the red light, but I didn't see it.
I think it came and went.
Oh, did it? I'm so sorry. My apologies, but if anyone wants to talk further about it, we're very welcome to. Hopeful that you would like to engage with us, so thank you.
Thank you. And Jude Munro for Uniting VicTas. Thank you, Jude.
Thank you, Moderator. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jude Munro and I'm the Board Chair of Uniting VicTas. I identify as gay, use the pronouns she, her, and I live on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. We belong to the day could easily be the motto of Uniting. We respond to today's emergency. We throw light on troubled and toxic times. We advocate for the most vulnerable in Victoria and Tasmania. We publish the report, Can't Afford to Live, bringing the extent of poverty into the light of day. 16% of Taswegians do not have enough to eat and regularly miss meals. Uniting's foundation is the Uniting Church, and we proudly partner with other parts of the Uniting Church to achieve our mission. We belong to the day in the Wimmera. Uniting successfully started a street to home program which identified 64 people sleeping rough, including, and I note the comment on tents previously, on a middle-aged woman living in a tent on her own in a national park. We belong to the day in Tasmania. In the past week, Uniting has started our first alcohol and other drug service in Tasmania, exporting the Victorian wonderful Catalyst program, helping people coming out of drinking or substance use post the withdrawal times, times which is very challenging and keeping people on track. We're operating that in conjunction with the North Hobart Uniting Church. We belong to the day and honour the history of Uniting Church's community services in Ballarat. 25 years at Breezeway of serving meals on a daily basis, 500,000 over the years, to Ballarat's most vulnerable. We know that one of the keys to a learning for children is kindergartens. It brings confidence. They see diversity, they grow the skills they need to successfully transition to school. We've grown kindergartens for 3 and 4-year-olds, and we thank all those congregations, the nearly 55 who provide early learning centres, and we reside on Uniting Church land there. We work in housing, and we have attracted 58 million in state government funding towards our housing goals. Looking forward to developments in Wangaratta, Bendigo, Ballarat, opportunities in Ivanhoe, Coburg and Ringwood. Thank you so much for your continued support of Uniting. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I invite you to take 5 minutes in table groups to discuss what you've heard, what you've read in your reports, what you've encountered in your Choose Your Own Report sessions, and we'll bring questions in 5 minutes' time. might want to make your last comments. All right, so those with questions or comments, could you please take a yellow card and head for a microphone? Thank you. Everyone likes the east microphone, I don't know why. People of the morning. All right. On the east, thank you.
Thank you, Moderator. Nigel Hanscamp, Yarra Yarra Presbytery, on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. Over the last few days, these questions are this question area of questions for Uniting and Uniting Age Well. Over the last few days, we've been wrestling as a synod with issues of secure work and the Uniting Church as employer principles around ethical procurement and around zero emissions, which are linked because we want to buy solar panels that are modern slavery free, but we struggle with that. We do this in the trust that these decisions are made and have an impact on the work of Uniting Victaz and Uniting Age Well. But for most of us as ordinary synod members, we don't see that play out. So I wonder if you could give us, rather than give us a yes/no answer, give us an indication of what happens to these proposals when they get passed into your organisation tomorrow or Monday. I mean, tomorrow's probably too soon, but in the board and in the senior staff, when decisions are being made, are these being paid attention to, and how does that happen?
Thank you. Thank you, Jude.
So, for instance, on the modern slavery statement, we had a working group within Uniting that worked its way through that and sorted out our procurement as far back as we could do that, and got our procurement in order as much as we possibly could. In areas like sustainability, Uniting has developed a sustainability policy. We've asked management to go away and think through what a practical implementation of that is. As you know, retrofitting photovoltaic cells is not the best it can be, but when we build a new building, for instance, we would look at incorporating the sustainability principles. So we take what the Synod, what Assembly comes up with very seriously, and we work it through as one of the institutions of the Church.
Thank you. And from the West?
Moderator Margaret Mayman, working on Wurundjeri land, Presbytery of Yarra Yarra, she, her pronouns. I am also married to the Director of Mission, so this is not an entirely unbalanced for Uniting Age Well, so just declaring that. But I am interested that since the Royal Commission, the hours that of person-to-person care that are received in aged care have been mandated by the government, and I am just curious about how that's related to your experience of offering spiritual care through Uniting Age Well, and particularly what are the expectations in regard to provision of spiritual care, and what's the funding arrangements for it? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for that question. Andrew Kinnesley, CEO, Uniting Age Well. I live on the lands of the Wallarong people. It's a really challenging situation for us. Mandatory minutes of care per occupied bed day is something that went live from October 1. There's an expectation that we have a certain number of registered nurse minutes and care minutes for every day of every quarter, and we're required to report on that. There's an expectation that the people are there for those roles, and that we can actually recruit to those roles, which is not the reality in terms of where we are at the moment. What I see in the industry is people moving resources to care-related services and away from non-care-related services in what we might see as clinical care needs as such. And what we see as an industry is, I think, a deterioration in things like spiritual care and lifestyle services and those sort of things within sites. At Uniting Age Well, we are absolutely committed to strengthening our spiritual care. We're committed to increasing resources in that space, both spiritual care and lifestyle, and there's a lot of overlaps between those two parts of our service. I think it'd be detriment to the sector as a whole as we see that trend go differently than what Uniting Age Well's chosen to do.
Thank you. Question in the east.
Thank you, Moderator. Cameron Shields, North East Presbytery, living on the lands of the Yorta Yorta and Bangarang people. I'd just like to commend the hard work that all three boards do to carry out the work of the church. And I'd really like to encourage that the three boards work collaboratively together. Andrew and I have had conversations about how Uniting and Age Well can better work together. But I'd really like to see all three boards develop some ways on how they can work together collaboratively. I think through that teamwork there can be some great growth. So I really look forward to at the next Synod reading about the collaborative work that the three boards are undertaking.
We might take that as a comment. I'm sure that could be responded to in a variety of ways. But so, yep, Jude, thank you.
So we're sisters in arms, Raylene and I, literally. And we would talk together probably every couple of months and talk through issues. One of the ones that our CEOs talked through was the initiation with us in Uniting, working in the area of home care, and we actually felt it was better placed with UAW. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so many of you will remember, the beginnings of Uniting and the questions about whether there should be one organisation or two, and, we are what we are, we're two organisations, but when we look at how we deliver services, we look strategically at these issues, and therefore we came to a joint understanding that the aged care parts of Uniting sat better functionally with Uniting Age Well. And so that's happened over the last year, and we think it's a pretty major achievement. It was a pretty smooth transition as we understand it. I'm sure there might be one or two people who don't think that, but we generally think it went very well, and we think it is more efficient and more effective in terms of delivering the services on behalf of the church.
And I'll just add, many of you will notice that there's a big hole in the room here from Uniting. Amy's doing a sterling job taking on the acting CEO job, but Bronwyn Pike has had a family issue and the board has given her 4 months extended family leave, and I know your thoughts and prayers would be with her.
Thank you. I'm also going to comment, just by the way, that the General Secretary and I meet regularly at a governance level. We meet regularly with the chairs and CEOs all together and discuss things like board membership and so on, and that's quite effective too. Microphone on the west.
Moderator Graham Harrison, Yarra Yarra Presbytery. I live, work and rest on Wurundjeri land. I'm addressing you ethical. I have a criticism and a suggestion. We see before us in this forum a whole group of people who are passionately devoted to social justice. You Ethical does amazing work in social justice, and yet only 6 people turned up. So I'm saying that there is a disparity between what you're doing and what people are hearing. So I just wonder how we can do better to get this work of justice out there. I know in my own congregation, the only one who can really spruik is myself, and I feel a bit weird about that, spruiking for people to put money into You Ethical, but I do it anyway because what you do is so good. So that's my first critique. How can we get the message out there better? Because you're not doing it well at the moment. So the second comment is we also have before us a Uniting Church in which most people are over 70, which means a heck of a lot of super. And I was once told that if everyone in the Uniting Church put their super into an ethical account, they could do more for climate change than any other activity. I put that out there. Have you considered going into super?
Matt Browning, CEO. I live and work on Wurundjeri land. Thank you for both of those questions. Addressing the first of them, we are reimagining at the moment how we present ourselves more broadly and what the narrative is. Part of this has been prompted by greenwashing. There are an awful lot of additional rules and regulations that we are obliged to comply with in how we actually present ourselves, the words that we're allowed to use, how we define those words. And so there are elements about how we talk about the social justice work, there are elements about how we want to talk about the funding we do provide to Synod, and we want to provide more funding to Synod, and how that facilitates the work that is done in congregation world. So thank you for that comment, and we can do better at it, and it is on the agenda. In relation to, sorry, I've forgotten the second question already. Superannuation. Now, superannuation, I don't know whether anyone's aware, but APRA is trying to shut down small superannuation funds, not start new ones. So we did entertain and have a look at that as an opportunity, but it is incredibly complex, highly regulated, and there's an enormous amount of pressure on superannuation funds now to do better than they are doing. Where we are, through the work that we are doing, where there is opportunity in relation to super is that, as Lindsay mentioned, we've now been rated in relation to some of our products. Those products will end up on investment platforms. So for those of you who do use investment platforms and have super on investment platforms, our products will progressively become available on those platforms for investment. But actually doing it directly would be too big a task for an organisation of our scale.
Thank you. We are beginning to run over time, but I'll take the two questions that are at the microphone. Thank you.
Moderator Ricky Beswick, Presbytery of Tasmania. I live in the land of the Muanina people. It's probably more of a comment from our table, which was, given the significant footprint that the agencies of the church have and the wisdom that they have to impart to us, and the recognition that in many ways the congregational life doesn't connect that well, we thought that it deserved a bit more prominence and time than what we're giving it at this assembly, and so we'd just encourage that in the future perhaps it was given more time and prominence. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take that as a comment, and that prompts me to point out that we are going to have some evaluations available in due course, so more about that shortly. Again from the East.
Thank you, Moderator. Alistair McRae, Uniting VicTas, and I live on lands of the Wurundjeri people. The question for You Ethical, and I preface this by saying I'm a huge fan of You Ethical. I have my many millions invested in You Ethical, significantly fund Synod operations. But are you interested in my kids? When my children were born, their pocket money didn't go into the Commonwealth Bank. It went into the Development Fund. Do you remember that one? And as far as I know, they all still have You Ethical accounts because they transferred across. But the other day, one of my children, the only one who has any significant funds, said, "Dad, when's You Ethical going to get an app? Because to put money in and get money out, it is the clunkiest, most difficult process. Are they going to get an app? Are they interested in the small personal investor or only the big institutional funds?" So that's my question. Are you interested in my children's money? They would all love to invest in the church.
Thank you, Matt.
Matt Browning, CEO, You Ethical. I live and work on Wurundjeri land. We're interested in everybody's money. And we are somewhat reliant on our external service providers in relation to the technology that they provide us to enable our clients to transact with us. We have had conversation about whether we would develop an app, but again, it's not a small feat for an organisation of our scale to introduce something like that. We are working with the service providers to try and actually make life easier. Whether they ever get to the point of developing an app that enables their clients is something that we'll explore with them. The particular service provider concerned has just been taken over by another company. That's the second time, I think, within 3 years. So we are engaging with them around the technology that they do provide, and they are committed to spending money on technology. Whether that extends to an app or just a much better web experience, I can't answer at the moment, Alistair, but I'll let you know.
Thank you. All right, can we say thank you to those who have presented on stage, our chairs and CEOs. Thank you for your attention to that. And let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for all of the work that we have been considering this morning, and for all those who act on our behalf in these spaces. We thank you for the Synod ministries and operations teams, for those members who work for the Ministry and Mission Committee and the Property and Operations Committees. We give thanks for the leadership of U Ethical, Uniting Age Well and Uniting VicTaz. And we pray that in the ministry and mission that is offered, in the vision that is offered in all of this space, we give thanks that it is your love and the values that you have led us to that shine us through. So hear our prayers for all involved, in Jesus' name. Amen. Stand up and shake just for a moment, do not go away, because we have an important thank you to offer, which is a minute of appreciation for Ikani Vaitohi. So I invite Ikani to come forward. And so while you're shaking, Isabel is going to move down. Paul Chandler will also come up to the front. Thank you. All right, let me introduce to you, to propose the minute of appreciation for Reverend Ikani Vaitohi, who has been the chairperson of the Ministry and Mission Committee. Let me introduce Isabel Thomas-Dobson, who is going to speak first as mover of this motion. Thank you.
Isabel Thomas-Dobson, Associate General Secretary, live on the Wurundjeri lands, and I'm also speaking as Executive Secretary of the Ministry and Mission Committee. Proposal 17, it's my honour to propose that the Synod resolve to give thanks to God for Reverend Ikani Vaitohi and his creative, inclusive and inspiring leadership as the chairperson of the Synod's Ministry and Mission Committee from June 2021 until 2023. Ikani was a member of the committee before he moved into that role, and he took it on with his enthusiasm, commitment, creativity, ability to build community, to engender a sense of purpose and vision within the committee. And M&M is one of the really significant places where the questions about the who we are of the people of God in this synod, how is that lived out, how is it resourced, encouraged, what training is offered, all of those questions, as well as the routine ones like who do we appoint to this body now, are considered. So, and it is also the body that has significant oversight of the Synod's Ministerial Education Board, which in this Synod is now the TMEC, Theological Ministry and Education Committee, of which Ikani was also a member. So that was a lot of things to add to the life of a congregational minister. I want to say thank you to the two congregations that he was in that enabled him to exercise that ministry. In Jay's minute of appreciation yesterday, we heard a lot about cake and a lot about the challenges of Zoom. We didn't do too well on the cake, but we did do marvellously on the Zoom leadership that Akani offered, and I'm sure all of M&M remember with deep appreciation your whole family leading us in worship and singing while you know what it was like on Zoom when you couldn't say anything together unless people were in one place. So Akani's leadership has been wonderful, inspiring. It has been a shorter period than he or the committee hoped because of a period of ill health, which we are now able to see that rough time is, yes, it has moved on. But I move this proposal. Paul will add more words.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Moderator, Paul Chandler, M&M, Wurundjeri Country. What to say, my friend? I stumbled into my first combined meeting of M&M, P&O and Standing Committee in 2021, and about a third of the people there I knew from past engagements and others I didn't. And the first introduction that I had was, this is Akani, he's about to be the chair of M&M. Okay, right, good. But in that time, I've appreciated your welcome, the conduct of the meetings as a place of reflection and consideration and worship. Others have said, coming to this committee is like going to church. The character of the committee, and I hope that we are able to carry it forward, I believe, is very largely due to your presence and your character, and we are greatly indebted to your brief and shorter but important term as the chairperson of M&M. So thank you, go well, look after family, look after self, and worship God.
Thank you, Moderator, members of Synod, Igani Waitohi, member of the Presbytery of Port Phillip West. I work and live on the lands of the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung and the Wunurong people. It stings deeply when you're in the receiving end of those gracious words. Perhaps just offer a word of thanks. The opening service, the opening worship of this meeting of the Synod, I was deeply moved by the generous and heartfelt welcome that Brooke offered all of us to join our Indigenous friends around the campfire, a place where stories are shared, deep listening occur, where weaving and unweaving happens. I give thanks to God and for God's church for giving me that space, giving me that opportunity in the work and the ministry expressed through the ministry and mission. I am deeply thankful to the chair, to Paul, Executive Secretary, Isabel Thomas Dobson, colleagues, conversation partners, committees. Thank you for your support, for your encouragement, and may I say, mostly, for your patience, and allowing me to grow into the role and to continue to exercise that. With that, I give you thanks. And with my commitment that I continue to hold the work of the committee, the important work of the committee, in my prayer, and I'm sure in the prayer of the Synod, as we continue to work on how to be a church for the day. So thank you. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you, Akani. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give great thanks for the beautiful character that you have grown in Akani and for the spirit with which she has led meetings of the Ministry and Mission Committee, for the witness that he has borne in all sorts of ways, and for his commitment to the gospel and to ministry and mission. Gracious God, we pray that your Spirit will continue with him in strength, in grace and in peace. And we offer all of our prayers with thanks to you in Christ. Amen. The business manager has some announcements before morning tea.
Thank you, Moderator. I'm delighted to say that the ballot is now up and running, just moments from hitting the print button for an old school paper ballot. So that's good. Apparently an international timeframe muddle up with s15. You've had the profiles for the nominees for some time, so the ballot will still close at the end of morning tea, and I encourage you, if you haven't already voted, to do that before you go to morning tea. Don't forget, if you haven't already visited the displays in the lower hall, they're open there, particularly the CTM resourcing to order any books or resources. And our last chance to put your name in the bowl for today's draw for the Uniting Fire and Clay hamper. And I think that's all. We'll see you back here at 11:30.
Thank you. Don't forget to vote, and you are on break.